Welcome to our 2021 World Migratory Bird Day Scavenger Hunt event. And my name is Nani Welsh. I am one of the science outreach interns here at the San Francisco Bay Bird Observatory. And I'm also co-hosting with another a science outreach intern, Karina, if you want to introduce.
Hi all, I'm Karina. Welcome to our event, and I'm super excited.
All right, so yes, welcome. And we are here to share the joys of birding and bird identifying with you guys, as well as some tips and tricks to help find your certain species and to photograph your favorite birds. So, and we're also here to help support you guys, share your progress, and cheer on for you guys throughout this entire scavenger hunt, which is really exciting for us. And to start things off, I'm gonna hand it off to our guest speaker, Jeff Young. Jeff is a very talented wildlife photographer based in Santa Barbara, California. He shares bird, mammal, and photos on his Instagram and has been published in Forbes, Business Insider, and the Mercury News. And he also sells his wildlife photography prints online to share the true beauty of nature. So welcome to Jeff, and I'm gonna hand it off to you now.
Hey everyone, thanks Karina and Nani for having me here. I'm really stoked to share some photography tips with everyone. This is going to be a general just introduction to bird photography, and I hope I'll get you some tools to help you out with this scavenger hunt. Here is your intro to bird photography. That's me. Been a nature photographer for around 10 years now, and probably a birder all of my life, but I haven't seriously gotten into birding until the last 2 years or so, and it's just kind of escalated, and birding and photography go really well together. So it's a natural combination of spending time in nature and just enjoying the birds. I want to start off with mindset. A lot of bird photography, it's really fun, but it's also really challenging. So I want everyone to know that it's okay to miss the shot. One takeaway from this conversation that I want everyone to have is that at the end of the day, birding photography is just a small piece of connecting with nature. If you walk away with some awesome shots, that's great. But even if you don't, it's never wasted time. Just being out there, experiencing the birds in their natural habitat is really what I'm in it for. So that's kind of my motivation. And another thing is it's not only fun, but some of the shots can be used to tell stories and connect other folks with nature, whether online or through citizen science. I also want to kind of just break down some of the highlights of probably what you see on Instagram and from professional birding photographers. These are a couple of my shots of burrowing owls and a short-eared owl. When you're seeing this kind of photography, you're seeing kind of like a lot of work and a lot of editing going into a select few shots, but what you're not seeing is that most shots look like this. This is a short-eared owl doing something cool, I'm sure, but I totally missed it. And this is what most of my shots look like. And I just want everyone to know it's totally okay to fill your hard drive with these kind of shots. That's how you get better. And also, birds are super challenging. They're really fast, they fly. They're really difficult subjects to work with. And so a lot of your shots are gonna look like these. And if anyone can't tell, this is actually a peregrine falcon prey exchange. These are two peregrine falcons handing off food midair, and I totally nailed it. And here's another shot, a flycatcher. I almost got this one. This would have been a really cool in-flight action shot. But yeah, missed it again. And here's another shot that I'm super proud of. These are two short-eared owls, which are kind of hard to find. They're rare in California, very migratory. And not only did I find one, I found two, and they were interacting with each other in the air, but missed the focus, was like compositions all over the place. So I just want everyone to know that this is a lot of what birding photography looks like, the end result. It's not always what you see on Instagram, and it's still just as fun. It's just as rewarding. But if you get shots that look like this, sometimes the experience and the story is really what you're taking away from it. This is also what a lot of my pictures look like because to catch the migratory birds, you've got to get up at 5 a.m., 6 a.m. sometimes because most birds migrate at night. So in that case, like you're just out, you're waiting, you might hear or see a really spectacular, magnificent bird, but it's just totally dark. So I'm going to go a little bit into gear. I think something that's really important about bird photography is the gear does make it easier. If you have a 600mm lens, a really nice mirrorless camera, it's going to make it easier, but it's not necessary. You can still get cool pictures and tell good conservation stories with your iPhone, your DSLR, whatever else you have. And so I'm going to go into kind of some of the gear that I use and some of the gear that other photographers use, but I don't want anyone to feel that just because you don't have a certain piece of equipment that you can't get cool or interesting bird shots. So the most important gear that you have are your eyes and your ears. You can go out and without a camera, without binoculars, and still have an amazing experience finding these birds and locating these birds in the scavenger hunt. So if you don't have you know, an iPhone that takes great pictures, a DSLR, mirrorless, binoculars, any of that, you can still participate and have an awesome time. And sometimes I just leave all of my gear at home and I just go out in the field and just listen and look for birds. And that's kind of like the base level. Everything else is just icing on the cake, but that's really what it's all about. And so at the end of the day, to make it really easy, you want a long telephoto lens if you can get access to one. DSLR and mirrorless cameras are really great. I use a mirrorless camera because it's good in low light situations, which sometimes birding early in the morning, late in the day, that's really useful. And of course, binoculars and your phone. And there's even these telephoto adapters that you can get for your phone now that are pretty effective as well. So don't feel that if you have don't have a nice camera that you can't get out there and take bird pictures. If you do end up wanting to get into longer telephoto lenses, you can rent, borrow, and buy used. These are all super viable strategies to getting these telephoto lenses that might otherwise be out of reach for a lot of folks. And I'm just kind of highlighting this one here. There are other lenses that you can use, but for birds, it's really nice to have that 600mm reach. And if you look around, you can sometimes find these Sigma 150 through 600mm online used, or borrow one from a friend, or even rent them. And that's a really effective way to get that really nice telephoto reach quickly without having to spend a bunch of money. So I'm going to talk a little bit about composition and camera techniques overall. And this fellow right here is a male Wilson's warbler. It's one of the targets of the scavenger hunt. And I actually got him this week. This is on a sycamore, a California native tree. So I'm going to highlight a few composition techniques. And when you go out in the field next time, I want you to try to think about all of these techniques and see if you can bring them together into one shot. So the first one that many of you have probably heard is the rule of thirds, but it's really pleasing to the eye when you can compose a photo that has 3 distinct sections or has your subject in a distinct third. So you can use the center, the sides, or you can invert, you can have the rule of thirds running horizontal. And kind of when you look at a bird and you see a bird in the field, and if you don't spook it and it's going to cooperate with you a bit, try to think about placing the bird into one of the thirds and see what that looks like. And with all these rules, it's really important to note that sometimes breaking the rules can bring the most interesting compositions. So although these are good guidelines, sometimes just totally disobeying the rule of thirds can make an excellent shot. And it's up to you to just play around and try to find that. Framing. Something that I try to look for in shots, is there anything natural in the background that really draws your eye towards the subject? In this case, we have a turkey vulture. I love when they do this. They just spread their wings and catch the sun. What I used here is just some hills in the background. You can't really tell what they are because I'm focusing on the bird, but the idea is that the hills draw your focus towards the center and the subject of the bird. So look for things like branches, leaves, flowers, fences. If you're in an urban environment, buildings, there are a lot of things you can use to frame your subject. And it's kind of more interesting than just having, you know, a sky background. So keep an eye out for framing. Separation from background. This is really hard. And so I picked this photo of a junco kind of in the understory. I love dark-eyed juncos, and they're ubiquitous. They're everywhere, but they're really challenging to shoot because they're so flighty and they love hiding out. So separation from background is a little bit more difficult to achieve, but you do it by getting a narrow depth of field when you're focusing, and then looking for backgrounds that are far away and don't have a lot of detail or complex things that will create noise to the photo. So you want to try to move to a position where you can see the bird with a really long sight line behind it and get rid of any crazy branches or leaves or anything like that. And this is one of the most challenging aspects of bird photography, I think, is really getting the bird to stand out, especially when it's a bird like a towhee or a junco just loving at school. And the other thing is, this is another great example of a rule that's great to break. Because birds so often don't want to perch out in the open for you, try make a composition that uses layers. Can you involve the different leaves and branches to your advantage instead of trying to get rid of them? Lighting. Lighting is really challenging again with birds. It can be dark, but this is kind of an example of breaking a rule. Usually you want the light right on your subject, but sometimes getting light behind your subject, here with the wings where it's coming through, this gives an interesting perspective to the bird that you wouldn't be able to get if the light was shining directly on it. So play around with lighting, see what different compositions you can come up with, whether the light's on the bird, whether it's coming through the leaves, it's like dappled lighting in the forest, or if it's harsh light coming directly behind the bird. Think about lighting in your composition and how you're using it to highlight your subject. And finally, bring it all together. In this composition, we got separation from the background. We have rule of thirds, and then I used the mountains here and the trees to create a natural framing for this short-eared owl. So when you go out for the scavenger hunt, try to bring all these rules together if you can in one shot. And if you end up breaking some of them to get a better shot or more interesting composition, that's okay too. And also, most importantly, is to get weird. Paul Nicklin, he's a National Geographic photographer, and he gave this piece of advice on his Instagram that I found extremely helpful. And he calls it the 80-20 rule, I think. And that basically means that you should spend 20% of your time trying to follow the rules and get a good, decent shot that you can post on, wherever you're going to post it. It's for work or social media or just to your friends. 20% of your time trying to get that shot, and then spend the rest of the 80% going crazy, just experimenting with things, learning, shooting in manual. And if all those shots look terrible, that's totally fine. But every once in a while, you'll get a shot that's spectacular. So I like this shot because it's something that I normally don't do. And this is a multiple frames stacked together. It's a composition, so it isn't just a single shot. I couldn't get close enough to these harriers, and it was too dark to get a nice portrait. So instead, I shot them from a distance, and I shot multiple shots in high speed and then put them all together to tell a single story. And so that's just an idea that I had one day, but it happened because I couldn't get the perfect, normal shot following all the rules. So keep that in mind. And tell a story if you can. I love taking bird portraits. I'll take bird portraits all day, but if you can capture some interesting behavior or the context, a story of what the bird is doing that day that you can then tell to a larger audience, I think that's super powerful and something that I really look for. So in this image, you have a mother burrowing owl bringing back a grasshopper to her young. And that to me was really exciting to capture. And I also think that there's kind of like some drama and some action unfolding in this picture. So try to tell a story. Camera settings. My number one tip is shoot manual if you can, even if that means when you first start out that you're just getting a lot of blurry shots, that's okay. Every shot will be a compromise. So whether it's dark, the bird is moving really quickly, whatever the case, you're not going to be able to put every piece of your camera settings or your technical knowledge or your composition into every single shot. Some shots are going to have to make sacrifices, and sometimes that can be interesting. For shutter speed, I recommend 1/1000th of a second minimum for action. So if you have birds in flight or they're moving around or you have a long lens, I recommend trying to stay above 1/1000th of a second. You want to be fast enough so that there's not motion blur. But again, don't be afraid to change it up. If you want a little motion blur, if you want to see the wings moving, see what happens when you come below 1/1000th of a second. For your f-stop, wide open is best if you want separation from the background and if you want lots of light to get into your camera so that you can shoot those fast shutter speeds. Try to keep your f-stop, depending on what lens you have, between f2.8 and the f8 range. And then finally, in a low light situation, bias towards overexposure. ISO can be your friend. And I think this is one of the most important camera setting, lessons that I've learned over the last few years, is that there's kind of this idea that if your ISO is too high, your image can be really noisy. But as long as your exposure is okay, especially on some of the newer cameras, you can actually get really decent shots, but bias towards getting a little bit too much exposure. Try to get it as bright as you can. That noise really shows up in post when you're trying to lighten areas that are too dark. capturing bird behavior. This is probably the most fun part of bird photography, is trying to get them to do something interesting. And unlike the shot that I showed earlier, this is a pair of mated peregrine falcons, and they're doing a prey exchange here to reestablish their pair bond. And also, I think the female is kind of testing the male to see if he's really up to snuff, if he's able to go out and provide birds for the nesting family. So this was something really cool. Just seeing it was spectacular, but I was really excited to be able to capture that. And now I have this story that I can tell of these peregrine falcons and their bond. Some tips and tricks for capturing cool bird behavior is pay attention to plants, and especially right now, water sources. In California, it's super dry. So if you want to see birds doing interesting things, see if you can find a little arroyo with like a pond or a trickle of water in it, a creek, the side of a lake. Anywhere where there's water, migrating birds are going to be looking for that water and doing interesting things. Plants are also really good to pay attention to. I staked out this flower before I found the hummingbird, and I just waited because I figured eventually hummingbirds passing through there would use this flower. Unfortunately, this is tree tobacco. It's a non-native plant. I love getting native plants in my photos, but in this case, it's a somewhat invasive plant. But same principle, there's lots of flowers that aren't necessarily native that will attract hummingbirds. If you can, though, look for native flowers. It makes a really cool conservation story. I love live oaks this time of year. So especially the coastal live oaks, if they're flowering, if there's any bugs on the oak, then birds are going to be flocking to that oak to refuel for migration. And that's a really good place to get bird foraging behavior. And pay a special attention to this plant. If you know what this is poison oak. I've gotten poison oak more times than I can count because I was paying attention to the birds. So keep your eye on that one. Here's some techniques. Oh, sorry, those are the techniques. Finally, I'd like to talk a little bit about ethics, citizen science, and conservation. The most important thing about bird photography is the bird itself. So whenever you're taking pictures of a bird subject, just make sure that the bird is the focus of all your actions. You don't want to ever disturb or stress the bird out in any way. You want to give them a lot of space. And you can look for signs, body language, that the bird is comfortable. If it's preening, if it's eating, things like that show you that the bird isn't stressed. On the other hand, if it's running away from you, or if it's flying, or if it otherwise seems fearful, you want to give it some space, and you don't want to make your goal of getting the shot affect the bird in any sort of negative way. This is super important during snowy plover nesting season. Just stay out of the roped areas, keep your dogs on leashes, don't stress them out because they need that energy to raise their young and protect them. And that goes for migratory birds too. Some of these birds are coming from South America and Central America, and they're just winging it every night trying to survive. So when you're taking pictures of them, just keep that in mind, that you don't want them to have to use any extra energy trying to evade you. And just kind of blend into the environment and let them approach you. This goes back to the plants and the water. If you can find a spot where the birds come to you, that makes it all the better. So that's something I'd really like to keep in mind with bird photography is, yeah, just keep the bird's best interests in mind and prioritize that over your own photography. This is something that I want to talk about in terms of citizen science and just overall conservation and environmental storytelling. This is kind of the counterexample to the invasive plant that I shared earlier. These stories tell kind of like a California environmental story here. We have one of my favorite flowers, which is a scarlet monkey flower. And I believe this is a female Anna's hummingbird. And if anyone can tell their symbiotic relationship from this image, it's kind of playing out in the photo. But here's the hummingbird approaching the flower, and here it is feeding the flower. And you can see that the flower is designed to just dump that pollen right on the hummingbird's head. So these are two California species that have evolved over time to work with each other. And it's literally designed to just boop, like bop that pollen right on the hummingbird's head. And that hummingbird is gonna go around and pollinate all of the other scarlet monkey flowers. And this is a really meaningful shot to me because I love California natives, I love wildflowers. And this shot captures two really important species and shows how they work together in the environment and their habitat. So I think that's something that is a huge motivating factor for me, and I hope all of you will take as well when you go out for this project or just birding in the future. Your photography, even if it's not a perfect artistic shot, can be really useful to scientists, especially if you post your photos on eBird or if you post them on iNaturalist. A lot of the range maps and ways that we can determine where birds are living are from folks like you going out into the field and taking photos and observing behavior, habitat, and letting us know where species are. So this shot is a lazuli bunting, and this is my first time ever seeing this bird, so it's not a super artistic shot, but I posted this on eBird and iNaturalist, and this was the first day this season that lazuli buntings were migrating through California, and it was also my first time seeing one, so really exciting. And hopefully, even though this, isn't like super Instagram worthy, this will be important and have scientific value if I post it on these citizen science apps. So I encourage everyone to do that. Finally, yeah, if you want to follow me for more birding and photography, I'm on Instagram. There's my handle. And if it's okay, I could take a few questions. Are there any questions in the chat?
So this comes from George, and he says, question on focusing mode. Do you use 3D tracking, and what do you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, George. And I do use tracking. I shoot on the Sony a7 III, and I use autofocus on its most responsive level, and I use subject tracking with the movable focus dot. And so for especially birds in flight, that's where I've had the best success.
Thank you, Jeff. That was awesome. And the one thing I really loved what you said is you using your bird photography to really connect with nature. And that's what we hope to show you guys through our scavenger hunt. So let me share my screen again real fast. But of course, too, we don't want to connect to the point we're getting poison oak or poison ivy. That would be bad. So I'll definitely take those precautions when it comes to anything involving bird safety, the behavior if they're looking hostile or nervous. Definitely be careful. But here is our PDF of our scavenger hunt. As you can see, we have a total of 9 birds you can locate, all in the Bay Area, as well as us listing some questions about migration, as well as some bird behaviors and questions following that. And we do ask, you do not have to fill out the entire thing in order to submit it, but of course you want to find as many as you can and really take that opportunity just to explore your neighborhood, your local forest, a beach, anything under the lines of that, and really embrace that connection with nature and going out and appreciating the different species of birds. And what else? Oh yeah, and we do ask to turn it in by May 10th. The event is from the 6th to the 9th, but if you're having some nice Mother's Day hikes and you can't get exactly in on the 9th, our strict cutoff is on the 10th. And those that do turn it in on or before May 10th will be entered into a drawing to win a prize. So that's really fun and great. So yeah, and of course too, since it is World Migratory Bird Day, we do highlight migratory birds in the scavenger hunt. But the question is, what exactly is migration and what makes a bird migratory? So I'm going to hand off to Karina to answer that.
So in the spirit of Migratory Bird Day, we just wanted to give you all a little background on migration if you don't know much about it already. This here is an image of some of the paths that birds will use to migrate. So bird migration is a regular seasonal movement, often north and south along a flyaway, which you can see here between breeding and wintering grounds. So many birds on our continent will spend the summers up in the boreal forests, high up north, and in the winter when it starts to get super cold, many migratory species will go south to South California, Texas, Arizona, but some even go further to Mexico and all the way down to South America. And one fun fact is that the Arctic tern holds the long distance migration record for all birds. It travels between the Arctic breeding grounds and the Antarctic every year. So it travels more than 18,000 miles. And we'll go to the next slide.
All right, perfect. So on to the next. And we are going to be highlighting some of the birds on our scavenger hunt and the best ways to find them in your local area. So yeah, on.
Yeah, so this is a bird that you might be seeing in California around this time of year. There are many swallows that you might be seeing, but this is a tree swallow. You can see it has a blue-green kind of head and back, which you can see in the sun if you get a good look at it through your binoculars. These swallows fly super fast, so sometimes they're tricky to see, but a good place to look for them is over open fields or sometimes lakes, fresh bodies of water. And these are, like you can tell by this migratory map, a really impressive species that goes all the way up where the orange is. That's where they're breeding in the summer. And then they are migrating down in California. I guess part of their range there is year-round, and they're wintering further down in the Gulf of Mexico area. So yeah, if you can see the species, check it off on your scavenger hunt. And a fun fact about these is that migrating and wintering tree swallows can form enormous flocks, numbering in hundreds of thousands of birds.
All right, and the next one that is also on the scavenger hunt we're going to cover is the yellow-rumped warbler. So they're known to travel short and far, with some populations migrating locally towards us, so in the Pacific coast, and some traveling all the way down to Mexico and Central America. And as you can see in the map, we're in a very interesting spot where they are usually winter migratory birds, but also they're year-round in that Bay Area and a little more north along the coast. So luckily, we can see them all year. And they are perching birds, so the best places to look for them, of course, are on outer limbs of trees or in fruiting shrubs. And I definitely just recommend checking out your local parks, woodlands, and areas. These birds are pretty, I wouldn't say pretty easy, but they're more convenient to spot just due to their perching as well as not being exactly coastal. And the most identifiable part of them, of course, is their yellow rumps and the white patches on their tails, which are very clearly presented when they're flying towards their favorite snack insects. And one fun fact is that the oldest recorded yellow-rumped warbler is at least 7 years old. So that's crazy to think.
So the next species that we wanted to highlight that we've included on our scavenger hunt is this larger shorebird named the long-billed dowitcher. And it is a long distance migrant, which you can see from the map here, breeding all the way in this portion of the Arctic and traveling all the way through Canada, Alaska, and most of the United States to spend the winters in Mexico. This time of year, you can find these dowitchers in some wetlands with the right level of water, about 3 inches deep or less. So some places you can look are freshwater ponds, reservoir edges, even sewage treatment facilities, things like this. You might be able to find this bird. So one fun fact, although both sexes will incubate the eggs, only the male takes care of the young once they hatch.
All right, and the next one being covered is my personal favorite, the snowy plover. So the snowy plovers are known to reside along shorelines of sandy beaches and salt plain habitats. And when you're looking for a plover, one thing to really consider is its size and its feathers. They are more difficult to view since they have those tan colored feathers that help them camouflage into that coastal scenery. And also too, when you are spotting them during feeding, they're known to kind of frantically pause, look around, run, and then seize their prey a little minusculously. So that's one interesting thing about them. And sometimes too, they are also known for probing in the sand. So yeah, definitely look towards those sandy beach coastal lines. And one fun fact is that young snowy plovers leave their nest within 3 hours of hatching. So right away, very independent, and they'll flatten themselves on the ground when a parent signals the approach of people or potential predators. And they can walk, run, and swim well and unassisted by parents. So that's a really cool fun fact. And also an important note to mention, and Jeff did mention or briefly mention this, the snowy plover is an endangered species and a threatened species. So definitely practice caution when you're seeking at them. Definitely don't mess with any nests, stay your distance, and so on.
All right, the next species that we have here is a really interesting colored bird, and it's called the hooded oriole. So you can see it has very bright colors, but it's kind of a tougher bird to see. I've only seen them once or twice. You can see in the map that they will come up to California when they're breeding, so they don't travel as far. They're more short distant migrants, but this is a good time to see them if you're in California. They're pretty inconspicuous, but you can listen for their call if you know what that sounds like. They're kind of the same size as an American robin. So if you think that you see a robin, but it has much brighter colors, it might be an oriole. So the fun fact for orioles is that a few in Southern California and Arizona have started hanging around neighborhoods all winter long because of the hummingbird feeders that people have put up, which provides them with free food instead of migrating all the way south.
Nice. And the final bird we're going to be covering is the Wilson's warbler. So when you're looking for the Wilson's warblers, the spring is the best time since the males can often be heard singing very loudly. So luckily, we're in the right time for viewing them. And when you are looking for them, definitely check out shrubby jangles along streams or ponds or even forested edges. And as you can see in this photo, the male Wilson's warbler has these bright yellow feathers surrounding it, really recognizable, as well as a little hat, a little dark patch of black feathers on top of its head. So it's not exact, or it's easier to identify between a yellow warbler and the Wilson's warbler, mainly with that male's little top hat. And a fun fact is that the majority of Wilson's warblers nest on the ground, except for populations in coastal California and Oregon, where they nest up to 5 feet off the ground. So that's a little drastic jump. And other than that too, we would like to present some resources that you can use in order to help find your birds. Say you're really looking for that Wilson's warbler and you can't find it. Luckily, there are many apps that you can use. They're available on Google Play, App Store, any sort of other app store for another device. And they are all are free resources. So if you download the Merlin or the Audubon app, simply all you have to do is, I think they may ask for just an email, but you can enter in and check out where birds are residing in your area based off of other people's submissions. So these are definitely really great resources to use if you're looking kind of for right away knowledge of where birds are. And also too, we do recommend field guides. Say you're more of an older soul and you're wanting to buy a book or a guide to help you identify and get those general characteristics of where they may be. there are definitely field guides out there that you can use. So yeah, and now any questions from any of our observers today? San Mateo County, have never seen these birds. Whoa, luckily you can find them in our scavenger hunts. Definitely use those resources, those apps to help you find recent observations of them. And yeah, and also too, you're getting those props, Jeff. They enjoyed your tips and tricks.
Thank you.
Oh, another question. Is it better early morning or late afternoon to observe?
Jeff, do you want to answer that from your experience?
Yeah, my personal experience is the earliest in the morning is best. You get a lot of singing and other activity. But just behind that, if it's a cold night or a cold morning and you wait till the sun comes out and starts hitting trees and warming bugs up, that's also a really great time. So depending on the day, mid-morning can be totally fine. And yeah, like you said, late afternoon is also a great time, especially towards dusk. You can get another round of singing and behavior as well. But yeah, my preference is early morning, early as I can handle.
Thank you all again for listening to us and celebrating World Migratory Bird Day with us.
And thanks for having me. It's fun to be here.
Gosh, thank you, Jeff.